Thanks for coming, everybody. We only have 20 minutes, and Christian isn't known for his short answers, if I could say that. So we're going to dive straight in. Christian, founder of Apeiron, makes investments through his family office, Apeiron, which has tentacles everywhere, Remind, PSYCH, lots of different categories. But psychedelics is a big investment focus of yours, right? The last couple of years have been quite difficult for psychedelic companies, including Apeiron Compass. So I wanted to ask you, and we just saw some data there from FTI. Why do you think it's been so difficult? Why do you think companies like Apeiron are being undervalued by investors, particularly institutional? And when do you think that would change? What do you think the turning point is?
That is maybe the shortest answer. So first of all, welcome everybody. I really think it's now. That's the good thing. But you saw the answers why investors are still hesitant. My general view is always, because I deal a lot with investors in various companies, institutional investors want to appear more smart than they are. So when you ask them, oh, why don't you buy a stock? Then they come up with all these super smart answers. The truth is they don't think the stock goes up. That's why, because they want to make money. Like, people buy stocks when they think they go up, and people sell stocks when they think they go down. Yeah. But no institute, meaning retail investors, might say that honestly, I didn't buy your stock because I didn't think over the last month it would go up. Yeah. While an institutional investor doesn't want to sound that sort of basic. So then they come up with all these answers. Yeah. But the truth is, for a while, people didn't think, both, by the way, psychedelic stocks and biotech stocks in general didn't go up. I think they're simplified said there are 2 or 3 real reasons. The one is, meaning at least the professional psychedelic companies are biotech companies, so they do drug development. And over the last 18 months, biotech was the worst sector, and it's the worst time in biotech. It has nothing to do with psychedelics ever, or at least since the last 20 years, which is mainly due to sort of the sudden interest rate rise because of inflation, and interest rates in a DCF model, discounted cash flow model, influence practically long-dated cash flow the most. And obviously biotech companies for a while have to invest, are loss-making, and then hopefully someone in the future, when they have a product, they're going to make revenues, but the further out that is, the more you are affected. So it was actually sort of correct, if you want to say it that way, that biotech as an entire sector corrected when interest rates were going up. Yeah. So, but why did psychedelic stocks correct much more? I think the main issue, which I personally see as an enormous chance or opportunity, is that pharma companies are, at least at the moment, at least from the discussions we have, truly not interested. Yeah, because they are, I don't think, by the way, because then I always get the emails, oh my God, this is a whole conspiracy. I think it's just like their business model. It's not something that they are evil or whatever, but they do like the pop a pill per day forever business model. That's what they want. Yeah, but it's not that they want it because they're evil to humanity. It's just like their business model. It's like a builder wants to build a house, a pharma company wants to sell a drug to a patient every day. So when presented practically with a completely different paradigm, in a good way, like psychedelics, who can be potentially curative, but you have to go to a therapist, it's a completely different model. I would say they just puzzled. It's not that they don't want it negatively or push it away. They're just like, okay, we're not really sure what to make out of that. It's a little bit the Tesla problem, where Elon Musk had to face, electric cars sound good, but you don't have the charging stations. And he was like, well, then I'm going to build the charging stations. But sort of that is what the psychedelic industry will have to go through, is we need to prove ourselves. And by the way, I'm happy about that, because I never wanted to sell to anybody. We have to prove ourselves that we can sort of make this new paradigm work.
So does that start with MAPS? Do you think MAPS is not just approval, but demonstrating that they can deliver and get reimbursement? Do you think that's going to be a turning point? Or are you saying you don't need kind of pharma partners at all? You just want to do it all in-house at Apeiron Compass?
So we don't want pharma partners. I don't think we need it, first of all. But it is 2 questions. The one is like, or 3, you need to have the capacity of people to do it. So that's going to be a lot of work. You need to have the capital to do it, which, by the way, and I don't want to sound arrogant, it's just a fact, like it excludes practically every single biotech company or psychedelic company out there. You need hundreds of millions. Yeah, and at these share prices, none of the stocks except Atai, maybe Compass, can raise money in the hundreds of millions. Yeah, and Atai doesn't even need to raise money, because we already have our cash plus our credit lines is more than 400 million. Yeah, so we can do it alone, but like just objectively looking at numbers, we're the only ones who have the sort of financial power to do it alone. And I'm always emphasizing, you need the patents. We have actually looked over the last 6 to 12 months on a lot of other, let's call so-called psychedelics companies, and we had to see that most of them don't have any IP protection for what they're doing, which is kind of a weird business model because they're spending monies of investors, they will never get any money back. So we would like to buy companies or assets if they are valuable because they have IP protection around it, which is very rare.
Yeah, right. And we'll get back to patents because I know it's something you like to talk about. But aside from the kind of medical model that Apeiron is working in, Compass and these other psychedelic biotechs, you have this kind of explosion on the policy reform side, right? So we heard about Australia earlier, which is a kind of rescheduling at the kind of regulatory level. But obviously in Oregon and Colorado, you have these more kind of voter-initiated ballot initiatives. So how do you view that in a kind of, not a personal, I don't want your personal opinion on decriminalization, but in a commercial sense, do you view that as a threat in the future if you think that we're only going to have a very limited number of conditions that are going to be reimbursable in psychedelic therapies? You have PTSD with MDMA, maybe TRD with Compass's molecule. How do you view that? Do you think that that's a commercial threat to your addressable market?
But first of all, by the way, I personally think it should be decriminalized everywhere because, meaning I'm doing it, so I shouldn't be a hypocrite. And it doesn't make any sense. Like, if you have a medical approved for medical use, why should somebody go to jail for it? Yeah, but I'm against practically legalization because it doesn't work. Because by the way, we had it. Till some months ago, it was an opinion. Now it's a fact. Look at the Netherlands. Yeah, in the Netherlands, you are able legally to do magic mushrooms. So they call it magic truffles. It's a little bit of a wording loophole. But the 2 clinics, which I love, by the way, and I paid for, I think, 70 patients to go there for synthesis and field trip, they closed down at the end because they couldn't run it commercially. Why? Because as long as it's not medicalized, you can't get it reimbursed from a healthcare insurance. And I think we always overestimate the amount of people who both have the money and the impetus to go out of their own sort of impetus to a psychedelic therapy. Yeah, because they could go to Mexico, they could go to the Netherlands, whatever. Yeah, but the amount of people who do that, we think this is all of us, because practically most likely it's all of us in the room. But it's not. Like 99% of the people, by the way, are also frightened. It's not just the money. It's like the sort of the woman, the 70-year-old woman in Idaho. Yeah, she doesn't want to go to a shaman who sings, and although I think it's cool, but she wants to go to her doctor. Yeah, who's maybe her doctor since 30, 40 years and wants to have. It's even not important for her that it's psychedelics. It's not even the word. Like, she wants to have a solution for her problem by the doctor next door, paid by her healthcare insurance. Yeah, and that's the market we target with Atai, and that's 99% of the market. So I'm happy if people go to Burning Man because, again, they can do all of that stuff right now, already. And if that is sort of more formally decriminalized, it's good, but it doesn't take anything away from the commercial market.
Okay, but humor me, if we did see something that looked, because at the moment it's kind of almost non-medical in name only, right? Oregon, you're not allowed to provide therapy, but it does look very similar to the kind of protocol, it's much more abbreviated, but it does look very similar to the psilocybin-assisted therapy protocols we're seeing in the trials, in the medical model. So if you did see a state that did allow, the legal use of psilocybin-assisted therapies or MDMA therapies, would you consider Atai or Compass, do you think it would be fair to wield the patents against those operators? So people who are operating in these state-level legal models, if they were doing something that did, in your opinion, infringe on the patents of Compass or Atai, would you sue them?
The economic answer is, as a company, you have to sue everybody who's infringing your patents. I just don't know if that case would infringe our patents. Yeah, but if
it would,
then it's a very clear answer. Like, I'm not shying away from that. If any company, but I want to just make it clear that it's not a psychedelic question. If I steal your phone, but just because I really, really want it, you would say, well, that's not okay because it's my phone. Yeah, so patents are ownership which are produced by investment into research. So just saying, if anybody or anything infringes any patent, any company, because we have shareholders, but even I don't want to shy away to say even I would do it if I would be the sole shareholder of Atai, because I think it's the right thing to do, if somebody takes away something. But I can even add, like, because we have shareholders, and maybe some shareholders are here, they want me sort of to protect our patents. I just don't think, by the way, so to go a little bit away from the controversial, because I think it's an artificial one, because I don't think these sort of ways are infringing the patents we're relying on. But this is also why, for example, you won't see any reimbursement in these things, and this is why there won't be any real business, which is hurting us.
Yeah. I mean, I can see a situation where, even in the US, if your insurance company covers it, you still might be out of pocket with a copay, which could be, a few grand. And at that point, maybe you would go to Mexico or Oregon or, Colorado. So that's the way that I'm starting to think about it. But on the topic of reimbursement, obviously, the audience will know the NHS is, in a very dire kind of financial position at the moment, partly political will, partly a lack of political will, partly demographic reality, not to get political. And then in the US, people are bouncing around from one job to another at increasingly frequent rates. So people are only on an insurance plan for sort of 3 or 4 years now. So across the world, we're seeing payers, whether they're state payers or private insurers, looking at kind of shorter return on investment periods. So how do you think we can convince insurers, and it's discussions that Compass and MAPS are certainly having, but how do you think we convince insurers to make that huge outlay, which could be 20, 30 grand, which is much higher than the conventional model which you mentioned, which is take home a medicine daily and it's 20p a day or whatever. So how do we convince insurers, basically?
So first of all, by the way, I do agree that especially in the US, the healthcare system is fucked up. Yeah, but that's not my job. I always say, look, like, let's do one thing after the other. Like, I'm taking care of psychedelics, other people need to take care. I think the US needs a reform of its healthcare system. Yeah, but that's a total different task. And again, it's not just a psychedelic sort of problem. It's for anything. So the good thing is, or I think two things. I think first of all, let me say, because I think that is my extremely positive view and optimistic view on the rollout, because why are pharma companies at the moment a little bit hesitant? Because they also think, oh, will this sort of work? And actually, when we talk to them, they're not saying, will this work? They're like, they all, by the way, 100% convinced these therapeutics get approved. So non-pharma company, none I've met says, oh, you won't make it. Everybody expects MAPS, Compass, and then the other Thai drugs to be approved. So that's practically like a sort of a fact or like an accepted reality, but they all think that the rollout will be more difficult. Yeah. So I don't think so. This is why I dare to sort of invest and sort of dare to take the challenge on, because I have a very optimistic view on the rollout, because the infrastructure is already there, because we have therapists. It's not new. Therapy is not new. Yeah. And sort of training a therapist, yes, they need a little bit of extra training, but because psychedelics are not toxic in a body sense, like, you don't need to train a therapist to become a cardiologist because there could be a problem with the heart. It isn't. Yeah. So it's practically just a little bit of an add-on training, because if you're a good therapist, I always would say, if you're a good human being, you can be a good psychedelic therapist with no more or not a lot of more training. So the infrastructure, because everybody's always asking me, but where's the infrastructure coming from? The infrastructure is already out there by all the therapists working. Actually, in fact, I think being a therapist will become a more thoughtful or a more desirable job, because every therapist I'm talking to is like, oh, I have to work without psychedelics right now, unless I do it in the underground, which is a shame, because I know they work and it's actually the one tool I really need to help my patients. So I do think once psychedelics are out there, becoming a therapist will be a much more fulfilling job, because suddenly we give them the tool set to really sort of be successful. So, and then last point, why I think this whole rollout thing will happen way, way faster than any pharma company and any investor thinks, is because I have seen maybe around about 40 friends in my environment who really used psychedelics because they wanted to cure something. Yeah, and first of all, I always say this is my small little Christian study, and obviously these were different sort of ailments, different problems. It's not a really double-blinded whatever study, but all 40 of them were helped, which is not all were cured, but all were significantly better. Many were cured. But what is equally important, all of them, literally every single person, became an advocate. So I have never seen any person affected positively by psychedelics who didn't go out after and was like, I want to talk about it. Some might just want to talk to their parents, to their friends, but you always, literally every single person says, oh, at least I have to tell my very close friends and family because I want them to be helped as well. And then some people, like my co-founder Lars Wilde of Apeiron Compass, he goes on TV and talks about that psychedelics cures depression. Why this is so important? Yeah, once these medications are approved, we're gonna see an unprecedented bottom-up drive, because at the moment, for, by the way, regulatory reasons and cost reasons, yeah, we position on paper psychedelics as sort of the last resort. You like call it, you do treatment-resistant depression. By the way, why? Because these people are in such a bad condition that it's kind of easy and obvious to prove that we can help them. Yeah, so you don't go for the light ones for just to show the effect and sort of the gap you can, positive gap you can produce. But like, people will, so technically on paper it will say, oh, to the therapist, try, I don't know, benzos first, try this first, and then if nothing helps, then do psychedelics. But that won't be the case in reality. People will tell their therapist, why should I start with the shitty stuff? Please, my cousin was helped by psychedelics. I want to start with that right away. So you're going to see, so I'm extremely, but I want to really, because that is, I think that is the number one, and people might disagree, but that's the number one issue which will decide about the sort of success or not success of sort of psychedelics will be that rollout question. And I'm very, very confident that patients will demand it. Yeah, and we're gonna see a fairly easy rollout.
And do you think that public pressure will sway payers? Because the therapist
exactly. So sorry. Pay, right? And so to your payment question, payers are not as, again, by the way, my main point is, because I get these questions in generally very often with this connotation, is there a conspiracy theory of, is Big Pharma evil, whatever. They are rational within their sort of world, yeah. Payers wanna pay as little as possible, yeah. But the good news is that or the sad news, but good news for psychedelics, yeah. The sad news is that if you look at the total costs of a depressive person. Yes, you might say, oh, they just take one pill a day and this is like not so expensive. But because these pills don't work really, yeah, they have days off. They don't show up at work. Yeah, there is, if the payer is smart, and they all are, and look at the holistic costs of a chronic depressed person. By the way, and then it normally doesn't stay with depression. Then sometimes it's becomes suicidal depression. Sometimes they unfortunately try a suicide attempt. Then they become maybe addicted to other drugs. So these mental health issues come, unfortunately, in combinations often, because they all, at the end, rooted in the same problems like trauma. So what I'm saying is, like, if you look at the sort of holistic costs of a patient, suddenly that's double-digit thousands dollars per year. And then we present them an alternative and say, yes, there is this one-time therapy, yeah, which is maybe $20,000 in total, but then you have a real chance that, from a humanitarian point of view, but also from a payer's point of view, a real chance that this person is fine then. And then they suddenly like, you know what, that's a good investment.
Okay, yeah, I think, that getting to the point where payers take that holistic view is maybe, as you said, you're not here to fix the healthcare system, but that's something we should all be lobbying for, because, NICE doesn't do that. They don't take the social view, neither do payers in the US generally, except if they're kind of full system payers. So I think that is a big issue, getting them to take that social
There we're working on. That is one of our big sort of, indeed, tasks we need to make in order to get that sort of out broadly.
Okay, we have 2 minutes, so 2 quick questions. You've invested in Delix Therapeutics, a non-hallucinogenic psychedelic company. So far, most of the times I've heard you talk about the importance of the trip, whereas, Delix is doing non-hallucinogenic psychedelics. So is that investment, is it a hedge, or do you have some conviction about non-hallucinogenic psychedelics?
Again, the answers are always a little bit more complicated, because it's everything. Like, it was a hedge, is a hedge, because we don't know. Yeah, it's sort of not a hedge just to say, oh, it's a hedge. It's like, I can't say I have conviction because, and by the way, so would Delix say, I just was on the phone with them, because like they don't know, but it's a very interesting question. Yeah, is because at the end it's like you have the sort of psychedelic trip in the normal psychedelics, and then you have this neuroplasticity, which you get as well from the normal psychedelics. So the question is, how much is the neuroplasticity standalone? By the way, that's also the big question when people ask me for microdosing, yeah, because that's what they're seeking, is the neuroplasticity without the trip. So the honest answer is, scientifically, we don't know. So, but it's worth to sort of find out. The the hunch I have, or what becomes clearer and clearer over the last 2 years, is that there are certain conditions where neuroplasticity alone might be sufficient. Yeah, and then obviously, by the way, it's much cheaper because then you don't have the whole sort of therapy around. But then there are other conditions where you need the psychological element as well. By the way, I want to really emphasize, because this is why I believe in psychedelics, is because of the combination with therapy. It is like with any other sort of group of illnesses. Think about cancer. Yeah, if somebody would tell you, I have cancer, you wouldn't jump and say, okay, you need to take this. Yeah. What you would say is you go to an oncologist, and then the oncologist will first of all say, which cancer? A lung cancer is very different from a brain cancer, whatever. Yeah, then the question is with cancer, where does it come from? Because cancer has different roots. Yeah. Did you have a poisoning? Is it a genetic induced cancer? Whatever. So it's a very complicated question which an oncologist has to answer. And then based on their assessment, yeah, they're gonna give you the hopefully right cancer treatment. And it's exactly the same, and this is why therapy, by the way, even with non-psychedelics, or with non-hallucinogenic psychedelics, there will be a part of therapy because you need somebody who tells you what to do. You need a doctor, yeah? So this is not like, oh, let's try this and this, yeah? So people, and this is what we want to do, I want to give professionals, therapists, an as broad as possible tool set so that they can evaluate their patient. And by the way, maybe they combine therapies. Maybe they say, look, you have to start with MDMA, but then you do psilocybin after because you, by the way, so things don't come alone. Some people have a trauma, but then because they have a trauma, they had a shitty life. Like the beauty of the brain is that it's so complex and of our human existence, but we need to sort of treat humans with that respect sort of their individual story and sort of history.
Talking of individual stories, we're 2 minutes over time, but I have one last question. About a decade ago, I believe, on one, maybe your first trip or one of your first trips, you discovered or understood and appreciated the value of Bitcoin. And at that time, it was valued about 1/100th of what it is today. So I want to know what's been revealed to you in more recent trips, and if it's the next Bitcoin, just tell me off stage. Don't tell all of these.
I still believe in Bitcoin, by the way, because it's the short version is Bitcoin is sort of the inverse mirror of the stupidity of politicians, yeah, which is rather
the libertarian rant now.
So, but it's true, yeah. I think the world needs these one sort of independent currency. So, and because the stupidity of politicians is sort of endless, yeah.
What have you learned from another trip since then? Just one thing, maybe, no?
Well, the other one was, I had a trip later, like in 2016, which really led me to where we are now, was okay, you have to talk about psychedelics and you have to work on getting them back into society. So that was one other thing.
And here we are. So.
Yeah. By the way, maybe the fun story, which is nothing, meaning nothing, like it's personal, but it also shows you, by the way, how interesting psychedelics are. I had tried DMT for the first time earlier this year, and I was very excited because I'm also personally very on the spiritual side. So I believe in sort of that it's a connection to the divine. So I loved that part of it. And then I got kicked out of the trip, yeah, for a very simple and actually very good reason, because I counted, I had like 14, I think, psychedelic trips over the last 10 years. And I have an Excel file where I note down everything I learn and everything I want to be better as a human being. Yeah, and the big problem is, by the way, come back to therapy, is it's not just about getting the information, but it's also about sort of doing the hard work and then integrating what you learn into your life, changing behavior whatsoever. So I do this DMT trip, and actually what I was looking forward to was all the surfing through past lives or whatever, yeah. And then the message of this DMT trip was look, you start doing psychedelics for fun, yeah, which they shouldn't. You learned a lot and you integrated some stuff, but look in your Excel file, be honest to yourself, you have a lot to do, which you already know. We don't need to tell you again and again. You just need to do it. And I was yeah, kind of right. Yeah. So it was a little bit like getting scolded in high school. And then the trip ended, by the way. My shaman was completely puzzled because I took a double dose of DMT and it did not do anything. It did something to him. He was tripping harder than I did. Which was an interesting message, because which drug would do that? It would say, look, you shouldn't do it right now because go home and sort of work on yourself. That's what you need to do right now. So that was the last one.
Okay, on that note, thanks for coming, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Christian.